bury me in the parking lot of the A&P. Blow out the candles and blow out the lamp and light my pyre with my trading stand. Yeah. I had $3, but I needed 4 to go to heaven and redeem my soul.
Hey, what happened to 2, Mike?
I had $2, but I needed 3 to deliver me from the A&P.
Bravo, Mike, bravo, bellissimo. You really make all that up?
So before we get to the rooftop quarry location, I'm going to mention some things about it. There's some good news and there's some bad news. The good news is I was here in my last visit to Bloomington when I took pictures and not video, regrettably. But I have some footage and some information that we can line up and show you where scenes happened at rooftop. The bad news is rooftop quarry has been filled in, nearly all of it. I would say 80% of it has been filled in. It's unrecognizable from the movie. To make a long story short, for many, many years, people have been coming back to the quarries and using them as swimming holes, jumping off the ledges. It became more well known after Breaking Away was filmed at Rooftop Quarry. It made that quarry pretty popular. So a lot of people would come back not only to swim in the quarry or jump into the water, in the quarry, but also just see the location. So unfortunately, some people were injured, and unfortunately, one of the resolutions that stemmed from it is the owners of the quarry decided to just go ahead and start filling it in. Now, initially, they didn't fill it in completely from the get-go. Initially, what they did is they tried to bulldoze trees and debris over the rooftop portion of the quarry, which was the real high wall that you see the IU students, when they come up there and they're standing on the ridge, and the four guys, Dave, Mike, Moocher, and Cyril, when they see them up on there, that's the rooftop. That was way up there on the ledge. They put some debris up there to discourage jumping, but the quarry continued to be used, and it prompted the owners of the quarry to just go ahead and backfill it. So they have completely filled in all but one corner. So it's posted, and even if you go back to it, it just doesn't look like it did during filming. So instead of showing you a filled in quarry that looks nothing like the location, I thought I'd show you some of these trails, such as the one that I'm on that leads back to the quarry, and some quarries that haven't been filled in that are visible, that gives you an idea of what rooftop looked like before it was filled in.
Ah! It was right here. Why, Dolores? Why? Woo!
Hey, man, this feels great.
And here's another quarry, just to give you an idea of the sheer height of some of these cliffs back in here. Way up there, that's what rooftop had, a ledge that was way up there like that. So people were jumping off of that ledge and plummeting all the way down in here into the quarry. So you can see how that's extremely dangerous. I'm sure it was the rush of your life, but this is what a lot of these quarries back in here look like. Or look like in the case of rooftop, because as I said, it's been filled in. Okay, so this road directly here in front of me is the road that you first see Dave riding his bike on. He's carrying a trophy as he's riding, and he's just singing and sort of swerving down the road. There's a house way off in the distance that you can see, that triangular peak with the little, it has like a vented area that's beneath it, right there. You can see that in the background of that shot.
Your
So as Dave comes riding his bike in this direction singing, he passes by Nancy's house, which is right here. So she's coming out of the front door and she sees him and she's like, "Dave, is Moocher home?" And he just totally is oblivious to her. He doesn't acknowledge her. He just is singing and he keeps riding on. But you see her walking out here. She walks out to the right about here at the top of those steps and just stands and watches him as he rides off in this direction.
Hey, Moocher home?
And as Dave continues his ride down along this road, you see a woman sitting right here with her two kids. They're playing with the ball. She's sitting right there on that step, and he greets her as he rides by.
Hey, ciao, bambino.
Now, these decorative pieces here that you see were not there during filming, and these drainage tubes were not there as well. There's a couple walls that are like this along the street, but the way I was able to match it up was actually this. If you look in the distance during that shot, when he looks over here and greets that woman, you can see that brick. It's like a brick wall that comes down to the driveway that meets into the stone. And if you glance right here through the bushes, you can see a door. The door is now red to match the house, but it was white at the time of filming, and it's facing the direction that I'm filming. So you can see all of that in the image.
Hey, ciao, bambino.
So as Dave continues down the road, they show this house and the side of this house as well. Sort of like a quick glance over, and there's a woman standing right here with a rug, shaking out the rug.
Buongiorno.
The house was still yellow during filming. You can see how it has sort of like the twin triangular peaks at the front of it. And then this house has a triangular peak on the side with the 3 windows and then the 2 to the right of that. But that shot was taken from right about here. Okay, so this is the house that would have had the elderly couple that were sitting actually in chairs that are right like that. This is where the woman would have been sitting that she saw Dave riding down the street, and she said he used to be as normal as pumpkin pie.
He was as normal as pumpkin pie.
So as Dave rides up the road and comes up here, he stops at this intersection right here. Then you can see that church right there in front of him.
And now look at him.
Looks very, very much like it did in the movie. 2 things that are different though. The red door is no longer there, and there used to be a steeple that was on the top of it. The steeple was removed last year, so it is no longer there. Okay, so this house right in front of me is Dave and his family's house from the movie Breaking Away. Very recognizable with this, I'm gonna call it a turret. I don't know what you call it, but there's a little porch that's underneath it. The bay windows, triangular peak, and of course the stonework that you see, it's prevalent on it. Really cool looking house. Now, I came out here last night and met the owner of this house. I was taking some pictures, but I was losing light, and I talked to him for about a half an hour. Really cool guy. And he was, filling me in on a lot of things. One thing I did ask him was, were the interiors of his house used in the movie? Because a lot of times they're done on a set. And he said, no, they were done in here. Everything matches up. So I thought that was really cool. I love when movies do that. I understand the concept of using a sound set and a stage. But in this case, he said, no, it was all filmed right here. So that was really interesting to hear. But it was really cool hearing some of the stories he was telling me about the number of people that come by, just like I am. The impact that this movie has had on them. They want to come see the locations just as I'm doing, and that's the reason I do these locations. For people who can't see them themselves and want to come and who can't see them themselves and want to know what they look like, that's why I do this. Okay, I'm standing in the location of Moocher's house in the movie Breaking Away. Now this location threw me a couple curveballs trying to nail it down, and then I figured out something and it completely made sense. The first thing I'm going to talk about is this tower. I don't know what you call this on the top of this building. It looks like a tower to me. Whatever its proper name is, you're just going to have to excuse me, and I'm just going to call it a tower. But when Nancy goes to Moocher's house, the camera kind of pans in this direction like this, and that tower comes into the frame. It comes positioned perfectly like over top of his house. But I couldn't figure out how it lined up. And the reason was that tower has two of these, I don't know what these cylinder looking things that are on this side, and there's two on this side, but on the far side and on this side, they are not. And I couldn't figure out, I kept thinking if she was going to Moocher's house, this has to line up. And anytime I would make my way around the block, trying to figure out the exact location for it, these wouldn't line up. And then it dawned on me when I saw an old aerial picture. Nancy doesn't go to the front of Moocher's house, she goes to the back of it. If you remember, the building had like different housing numbers on it. So I believe he was number 4.
Nancy.
So when I came across that old picture and realized that there were the 2 houses, I was able to match up exactly where they were. And Moocher's house would have been, see this brick building right here? Moocher's house would have been like right in this footprint, partially on with this building, partially with that. And then there was another building that would have sat right here. So Nancy wasn't going to the front of Moocher's house. The front of his house would have been out here. She was going to the back of it. So when the camera pans along the back side of it, you can see this frame perfectly over the top of the house. And this is the location for Campus Cars. This is the car lot that Dave's father worked at.
It gets 30 miles to the gallon.
The little office building would have been right here on the same footprint as the building you see right in front of me. Now, it was torn down and this was added in its place, and you can see it kind of has there's like a little bit of a plaza that's here. But this is where the car lot office building would have been. And when I swing around, this is where the car lot would have been. Now this wasn't here, this has been added. This is a bus stop now, so they've kind of put like a little bit of a green, some landscaping in here. But this would have been all the surface lot like you see here, and this would have been where all the cars were lined up. Now, I can show you a few things to line up exactly where the building would have been. It was right here, as I said, and there's a few ways of telling that. First, when I come up here to the corner here, you can see these houses, 1, 2, and 3. So when Dave is talking to his dad in the office building, which would be right behind me now, he's asking for a day off. You can see this building, you can see this little awning that's there, and you can see the edge of the building. You can just see down the side of it, just as I'm showing you. So this would have been visible out the window.
Pop, can I have this Saturday off? Hell no.
You can also see that building right here, you know, the little white house with the little peaked roof. And you can also see this house here through the glass as well. It has a very recognizable up second level. So you see how the roof projects outward, and then it has a bank of windows along the side there? Those are all visible.
Just this once, Pop. I mean, right now, we'd be working.
That's what rooftop had, a ledge that was way up there like that. So people were jumping off of that ledge and plummeting all the way down in here into the quarry. Okay, I'm standing on a hill here to give you the shot they used when Mike and the guys are riding in the car when they turn on the campus. So they show the car, Mike will be driving as my finger's going down along this road here, and the camera sort of pans back and shows this out in the distance. Now, when I say this out, I mean the basketball arena and the football stadium. They're being obstructed now because this land out here has changed a lot. A softball field is now here, a baseball field is here. So this was more just like an open grass field. There were a couple like buildings that were out here in this direction that you see visible in that shot. But as they are driving along, you can hear Mike's car, like has headers on it or something. It has that you know, muscle car sound to it. But as they're driving down the road, tennis courts are right there, and that's the next stop I'll show you. Okay, so I'm standing by the tennis courts here in Indiana that are shown briefly as the guys are driving down the road. So they would have been coming along this road right here in the direction, if you follow my finger. And this is where you see Cyril. He's sort of hanging out of the car. And you can actually see these woods. There's leaves on the trees during that scene, but you can see as they're driving along, he's looking out the window as they drive down the road in this direction.
Going to college must do something to girls' tits, I swear. Just look at them.
As they drive along the road, going much quicker than I am walking, you can see the tennis facility here. And this windscreen was not on here. As I said, the vegetation and things around it, the landscaping has all changed. Had like a much more open look and feel to it, more like a field, and now you have more mature trees. But right here on the corner of the fence here, there was a sign that said Indiana University Varsity Tennis Courts. As they're sort of driving along as I'm walking, and that was right here.
Hi there. What's your major?
All right, so here's the location they used for when Rod, Katherine, and another girl were throwing frisbee. They were right out here in front of me throwing the frisbee. Now, Rod was standing over here in that building, the corner of the building with the windows, the concrete, the windows, and the overhang is right behind him. And then the obvious feature is this piece of artwork here. This more pointed peak was visible in that scene as well. So Rod throws a frisbee to Katherine, but it goes far and it goes out here and lands on the street. So you see Katherine, she goes running towards the frisbee. You see this in the background as she goes to run out onto the street. Now this has been reworked a little. This is some newer construction over here. So the sidewalks and road don't 100% quite match up the way they did during filming, but the road definitely was there. So in filming, the frisbee would have landed out here, and that's when Mike runs it over with the car. When Mike yells, "They're giving us the finger," you turn around and they show the angle from this direction. Rod was standing right here in the street, flipping them off. You can see that curb and that piece of artwork.
Come on! Hey, that bastard's giving us a finger. Hey, we're on their turf, Mike.
That's when Mike puts the car in reverse and he comes whipping it back up this road. So he puts the car in reverse. He would have been going backwards, and he whips it into this lane that's right here. And that's when Rod was standing right here now. The car would have been right here. That's when Rod is smacking it, calling them cutters. You can see that building off in the distance.
Come on! Dumbass cutters! Goddamn bastard, redneck retard!
Okay, right here is the exact spot where they filmed the scene of the team practicing in the stadium from the field level. So the team would have been right out here, and you can see the press box. If you come over to the very end of the press box, you drop down these portals and follow the line out. They shot that angle from right here. Press box looks pretty much the same as it did during filming. This bottom end has since been closed in. There's been a lot of additions to the stadium. It's beautiful now. But that team shot would have been, the team practice, I'm sorry, would have been right here. And here would have been the other angle that they show of the four guys sitting on the grass hillside. Now, this end zone has since been closed in since filming of the movie. This used to be a grass hillside with a section of bleachers that were like right here. So there was an opening here. Okay, so I'm at the location that was used for the scene when the guys are sitting on the grass hillside watching the football team practice. Now you can clearly see it looks much different now. They've enclosed this end zone on this end of the stadium. This is the south end zone. This used to be open with the exception of a small section of bleachers that were there. But right about in through this fence, and I'll show you here in a second where that concourse is, would have been the grass embankment that curved around, and the guys were sitting right there.
You know, I used to think I was a really great quarterback in high school.
Okay, so I came over here to the concourse, and they would have been sitting roughly here. I mean, it's hard to exactly pinpoint the exact spot, but this is as close as I'm going to get it. Because here's the wall of the existing part of the grandstand. So the hillside would have started to curve over, and the section of seats would have been right over here. So roughly right here is where the four of them were just sort of lounging on the ground.
I'm just gonna be Mike. 20-year-old Mike.
Now when they get up and walk, the camera is panning and they're walking on the grass hillside right here.
They're gonna keep calling us cutters.
And I'll show you something you see in that shot. This pillar here comes into view. This is the old, I should say the original grandstand. So all this, you can see how it's different material. This is all new. This is where that opening would have been. But when they're walking, you can see how they come up along the side of this. You can see that pillar and you can see where it's jointed. See these joints? You can see that in the background as they're walking in the direction that I'm filming.
For them it's just a dirty word. To me it's just something else I never got a chance to be.
Okay, this location right here in front of me is the view you would have had of Dave. He would have been laying on the ground right here, reading a book when he first sees Katherine. Now, it looks a little different here in the foreground right here because this used to be a roadway. So these are the doors that Katherine would have come out of the building with her other classmates, and you can see these two little pillars that are worked into the stonework here outside of the doors. So when the door opens, she steps right out here and you can see these two decorative pillars. He would have looked over right there to that building, and that's when he would have seen Katherine coming out of the building. So she obviously caught his attention, and he's like, "Mamma mia."
Mamma mia.
But this is also where he sees her drop her book when she gets on her scooter. There's the pine tree still there. It was a lot more full and healthy looking during filming, but this is where he sees her get on her scooter right here, and I'll take you over there and show you that. So this is where Katherine's scooter would have been. She would have gotten on her scooter right here. The landscaping looks a little different, but this is the right spot. You can see the pine tree that's visible in that shot is still here. It's pretty bare down here. It was much more full. I'm guessing the tree's sort of on its way out, unfortunately. But right here is where there was like some cement. So they've redone some landscaping here since filming. So this brick sidewalk is new. All this landscaping here is new. This was not like this during filming. This was concrete. So this is where she got on her scooter and kind of made a turn, and her notebook would have fallen out right here. So this is where Dave comes riding over without even stopping, scoops up her notebook, and then heads off in the grass in this direction. Okay, this is another one of the curves that they come around when Dave is chasing after Katherine. She's on the scooter and he's on the bike going through campus. And these are just some more roads through campus that Dave is chasing Katherine on. They weave, so they come through this part of campus, they weave in and out through here, they come down this road here, they go off in that direction, it curves again. The roads just keep winding. You can see a building right there through the trees, the top of that. You can see that visible in one of the scenes. This portion right here is what I'm pointing out. So Dave would have come shooting down this little hill in front of the greenhouse out into this intersection. So a car has to hit its brakes and lays on the horn, and Dave goes off in that direction. So right here is the sidewalk that they show Katherine come up onto with her scooter with Dave right behind her on the bike. She would have pulled right up here and parked her scooter. This is where that bike rack would have been. So this house right here would have been Katherine's sorority house. This is where she would have pulled up on the scooter. There would have been a bike rack right here when Dave rides up behind her and gives her a notebook. It was right in front of these steps that lead up to the sorority house.
Signorina, you,
Okay, so this would have been the road that Rod was driving the car with Katherine in it. They show him from kind of this angle driving towards me. And this is when they're driving past, they're going in this direction. and they're driving past the football stadium. So you can see the tower to the press box in that scene.
Susie says this guy sent you flowers.
So what? You never sent me flowers.
And that's when Rod is asking her, who is this guy? And she's sort of like, just some guy, you know, like asking him, what's gotten into you?
Who is he, Kat?
Just some crazy guy, Annette. God, what's gotten into you?
You see Dave sitting here out front working on the bike when the mailman walks up and hands him the mail. And that's when he realizes the Italians are coming to Indianapolis. So he, quickly jumps up, and they show him run around to the corner here to tell his mom. He's all excited to tell her that the Italians are coming.
Mama! Mama! Mama, the Italians are coming!
Now when Dave, as I said, he runs to the corner to tell his mom that the Italians are coming, she's back here doing some yard work. And I'll show you what this looks like over here. It's changed up. I mean, these trees have obviously grown up around the house. She would have been right back here, kind of in this corner. She would have been right, this fence wasn't up like this. So she would have been back out here doing, tending like the yard. And then that's when she looks back over here to Dave, and he would have been standing up here. That's when he crosses himself, and she's like, oh, says something to the effect of like, are you going to become Catholic now, or don't become Catholic now, something like that.
Oh, grazie, Tante Santa Maria.
Oh, Dave, try not to become Catholic on us.
But after Dave gets the news from the mailman, they also show him when he hops on his bike, he goes riding off right here. And you see, this is all like landscaped right now, but there's sort of a drop off. I'll show you right here. There's sort of a slope right here. So this is where he comes down on his bike, and he goes riding his bike off in that direction, and he's looking for the mailman. Okay, here's the location that they used for when Dave is riding his bike up the sidewalk and the mail carrier is walking down the sidewalk. He comes right to this step. This is where Dave gives him a hug and a kiss, and the mail carrier kind of like steps backwards, like, what the hell just happened? But it looks a little different than it did during filming. There was like a row of hedges that were along here. This house actually had two brick little walls that extended off. You can see how there's brick right here. Those are no longer there. But this house you can see visible. You can see the peaked roof that's back there with that column. You can see the windows, the door, the step. It looks different from the visual standpoint, just to kind of the way it was landscaped. But this is definitely the location that happened in. Okay, I'm at the location where Campus Street Car Wash sat in the movie Breaking Away. These two buildings are very recognizable, and they're still there. So when Mike is driving the car, Dave is hanging onto the side of the car with his bike. You can see that building on the corner, as well as this building. And he turns into the car wash right here. And this is where things really get different.
Car wash.
You can clearly see this building has been replaced, but when I swing around where the car wash used to be, it is now a residential building. So it looks nothing like it did during filming. But this is where he would have pulled in. So he would have pulled the car in here, and he would have stopped roughly here.
Gonna wait on college boys. Don't forget to smile now if you want a tip.
Okay, I went ahead and crossed the street just to show you the building that now sits here where the car wash was. So the car wash would have been right here.
Here's your sponge, and here's your rag, and there's your plates. And don't forget to punch the clock, shorty.
So this building now sits on the footprint of where the car wash once stood. Now after he does that, they do a shot across the street where the car had pulled out and stopped. It was roughly right here. Now a lot of these buildings have changed since then as well. I mean, you can see this whole side of the street is different, but these buildings up here and there, they just are different businesses. So I'm at the location where Dave meets up with Cyril. Dave's on his bike and Cyril's sort of jogging. This area here is sort of changed up a little since filming, but I'll show you how I know it was here. A few things I can match up. But if you remember, there was like an opening in the fence that's no longer here. There was like a sidewalk that came down the hill with a gate that's no longer here.
So your parents asking what you're gonna do? I think they're getting curious.
That's where Dave was on his bike and Cyril started jogging. So they slowly go up this path right here, and they're just sort of talking, this sidewalk, I should say, not path. And they're sort of talking about their future, you know, asking like, what do your parents think you're going to do? And Cyril's sort of talking about how he thought he was going to get a scholarship. That didn't come to fruition, you know, things about his dad. But that all happened right here.
I was sure I was going to get that scholarship. My dad, of course, was sure that I wouldn't.
And if you can see in the background, they actually passed these basketball courts. Now, it looks a little different than it does right now, but this is where that was filmed. Again, there's been renovations to this area since filming. As they continue along here on the path, walking in the direction that I am walking, you'll start to see some things that come into frame that lets you know this is where they filmed it. When you look over Cyril's shoulder, off here to the right, you're going to start to see a house that comes into the frame right here. Okay, I'm gonna zoom in. Can you see that house? There's a fireplace with the windows, 1, 2, 3. You can see that house. It's sort of like a rectangular house with that fireplace. You see that house come into the frame, and then this house with the peak, the triangle peak, and the window right there. That also comes into frame.
Well, I'm supposed to take this college entrance exam. I just want to see if I can pass.
Huh.
So this building right here used to be the pizzeria and Breaking Away. So they show a couple scenes right out here on the sidewalk.
All you need is a bedroll and a good horse. Don't forget your toothbrush. You're still in your cavity-prone years.
The first is when all 4 of the guys come out, and they're standing right out front here talking. The mic was just kind of leaning there by a parking meter. Right about, it was right in here, but these parking meters are here. The parking meter would have been right up here.
That's the place to be, right there. Wow.
Now there are parking meters that are still along here, but they've changed them up. So the order, you can see like here, the light poles and parking meters have all been changed up. And then they tell him, oh, here's your brother. Now his brother was a police officer, so you can see these buildings. So when they show his brother, the police officer, you can see this corner, all these buildings match up.
How you doing, guys?
And his brother basically was talking to him about how he heard he was hot rodding around town.
I hear you've been hot rodding around campus again.
Okay, so this location was used one more time in the movie as well. This is the road that Dave and Cyril would have been riding the bike along. Dave was pedaling and Cyril was sitting on his seat. And they go past the tennis courts here. And right here is where Cyril's like, hey, slow down. And he's like, watch out for that hole. Ow! They hit, you know, like a pothole, but that was right here, right in front of the tennis courts, right out here on the road. And you can see the basketball arena off in the distance as well.
Come on, just slow down. Hey, watch out for the hole. Ow!
So right out here is where Dave would have been serenading Katherine.
Katharina! Katharina!
So when he starts to serenade her, when he starts to sing, Katherine comes out of this window, or leans out of this window right here. She opens this window, and you can see that crest that's right there beside her.
Katharina!
So she opens this window up and she sits and she's looking down, right down here at Dave. And then you see this little stoop that's above the doorway here. Several girls come out of here. They're opening up the windows. They're looking down at him. And this is the view that you would have had of Dave and Cyril. So Cyril would have been standing right out here. But then they show Katherine up there, and they sort of zoom in on her. as she's right at that window right there.
Good night, and thank you.
So when the four guys cross the street, they come crossing over right over here diagonally with Dave pushing his bike.
He won't tell me who did it. It was dark.
And they come up here onto this sidewalk. Now, Moocher sort of stays out in the street, so he kind of goes out of frame. Mike walks along here. Dave is walking right here pushing his bike, and Cyril is right here.
Well, what kind of car did they drive? It was a Mercedes convertible.
Now, if you watch Cyril as he walks along here, do you see this curb right here? How it kind of comes out to a point right here? There's like a tree root growing up, but it's kind of like a point. And then as you follow up the sidewalk, it gets lower, 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 lower. He crosses right here. So if you watch that clip, Mike is walking here, Dave is pushing his bike, and Cyril's walking here. And when he gets right here to where it's flush with the concrete, he crosses over.
It was a Mercedes convertible.
Now this rail wasn't here during filming, but this one was. So when he walks, when Cyril crosses up here, he walks on the other side of this railing. So then he is on the other side of the railing. And then Dave is pushing his bike and Mike is walking here.
Was it blue? Yes. I've seen that car.
And Mike keeps peppering Cyril for answers to his questions. Like, what were you doing there by yourself? And, you know, what kind of car did they drive? And Cyril's just sort of blowing it off. He's sort of making fun of the, like making light of the matter. So he doesn't really, you know, he's giving just enough information, and Mike keeps, you know, drilling him for it. But as they continue to walk along here, you'll see a store that's obviously no longer here. It's been demolished, but I can insert a picture of what it looked like, the store when it was here during filming. But as they continue to walk up here, this telephone pole comes into view. So Mike would be right about here. He walks right past that telephone pole. Dave pushing his bike, Cyril on the other side.
Yes.
Okay, and when I swing around, they show another view of Mike standing here. Now, this school has been renovated, but there was a school, same school, just wasn't as modern looking as this. You can see that stop sign right there over Mike's shoulder. So he's turning around, kind of pointing, talking to Cyril, but you can see the school would have been off in the background right there.
All right. They want to fight? We're going to give them a fight.
Okay, so this location directly in front of me right here is the building that you see in the background when Rod is coming down the road in his car, coming towards me, and Mike is driving in his car in the opposite direction. So this is where you see Rod driving his car towards me, and then Mike puts the car in reverse and is also driving towards me. So they're both like coming this way as they film that scene. So they continue to drive backwards, and then finally Mike stops and puts the car in forward, and Rod continues along here with the girl in the car. And that's when you can see this here on the right. You can see this little, this has been replaced, but it's a similar kind of a design here next to the step, sort of like a little wall, a planter. So there's the two steps, and then you see this as well. There was a tree here during filming.
Is that him? Yes.
Okay, so when Mike, Cyril, and Moocher come into the Union here looking for Rod, they come in through these doors. Now, the doors would have been spiral at the time. You can see how the cutout is much wider than the current door that's in here. But they have the spiral doors. So they walk in here, and then Mike is sort of standing there and taking a look around. Now, you can see this dining hall has really changed since filming. It's much more modern, but you can see that basically it's like a long rectangular room. So it's the footprint is still the same as what was here during filming. So when Mike's standing here, he looks over here to the right, and these lights would have all been on at the time. So there would have been, these three windows are very visible, and there was a picture right here on the wall, and these are the two doors that they were both closed at the time. And that's when he looks in, he can see a guy standing right through this door right here who looked like he thought it was Rod, so he looks over here and kind of nods his head, and then they walk over here. So when Mike tries to first come into the bowling alley, he opens this door and it doesn't open, and then he opens up the door that is open and he walks in here. That's when he sees a guy standing right here who he thinks is Rod. He walks up to him, and it was right here where the two of them were standing. So Mike was here, and the guy who he thought was Rod was right there. Now, after he realizes he's made a mistake and goes to leave the bowling alley, there was a ball rack that was right here for filming, and that's where Cyril puts his fingers into the bowling ball hole, and he gets the bowling ball stuck on his hand. So he's sort of like trying to work with it to try to get it off, and he can't.
Come on, Cyril.
But they go ahead and exit the bowling alley back out this way.
My finger's stuck.
So when Mike, Cyril, and Moocher are on their way back out of the bowling alley, they come into this area here, and he asks Rod's new girlfriend, what's her major? And she says Soch, and he's like, oh, Soch is a nice major. And that's when Rod is coming up from behind him, from over here.
What's your major?
So,
No, Soch. That's a nice major, Soch.
And right before the fight breaks out, Mike would have been standing here in front of these windows. Cyril would have been standing right here with the bowling ball in his hand. Rod would have been right here, and Moocher would have been right here. But again, you can see all this stuff behind them. And that's when Moocher's like, come on, you know, like, let's get out of here. And that's when Rod says something to Moocher, and then Moocher comes back over here and punches Rod. That happened right here.
Let's get out of here.
Smart move, Shorty.
And then this is where the fight would have broke out. So right here, in front of the bowling alley in the Union, is where the fight would have happened. Now there's a scene where Mike gets shoved into like a table with a bunch of plates on it. That would have been right over here. When the police arrive, as you know, that's you know, Mike's brother. They come in through these doors right here, and they're trying to break everything up. And there's a shot of where Mike's brother, the police officer, is holding Rod. He's holding him back. That happened right here as well. Okay, I'm standing right underneath this theater here in downtown Bloomington, and this is a location that they used when Moocher and Dave were walking down the sidewalk, when basically Dave was telling Moocher how he wants to come clean with Katherine and tell her the truth. But they're walking on the sidewalk towards where I'm filming, and you can see they walk right underneath this awning. So you see how there's 3 rows of lights? Those are all visible, as is this now playing. You can see that all in the shot.
I tried calling her to tell her, but I just couldn't.
So as they start walking towards the direction I'm filming, you can start to see other things that come into the picture, such as this brick wall. And then this wall right here had some sort of like zigzag, looked like woodwork or something that was on it.
She's gonna see you in the 500, you know.
But basically Dave is half listening to Moocher because Moocher's telling him how he's gonna ask Nancy to marry him, and Dave really isn't paying much attention.
Hey, Dave, me and Nancy, we're gonna get married. What a mess.
When they get right up here to the corner, that's when Dave asks Moocher if he's Catholic and if he's been to confession. So right when they turn this corner right here, you can see this wall. See that pole? There was like it looked like an air conditioning unit or something that was sticking out of the window right here, and then you can see that pole as soon as they round the corner. And you can still see the brackets that are on it from where there must have been like a street sign or something. They're still visible. Not a street sign, probably like a no parking or something at one point. But that pole and that window with this brick wall are all right at the end of that scene when they turn the corner.
Catholic, aren't you? Yeah. Did you ever go to confession? Twice. Did it make you feel better?
Okay, this is the location in downtown Bloomington when Nancy was waiting for Moocher. They were meeting to go to the courthouse. Now this area is obviously under construction right now, so there's fencing, and I can't show you exactly what I want, but I can still show you enough to make the scene work. Nancy would have been standing right here at the end of this little, where the railing is with the wall, but the camera shows it from here. So she would have been standing right there, waiting for Moocher. And that's when Moocher comes up behind her and says he's sorry that he's late and that her hair looks great.
Hi. Sorry I'm late.
You look nice.
Your hair looks great.
Okay, I just came over here on the hillside to give you a little bit better view. So right there are the steps that they walk up, and then they walk past the base of this statue, and they walk on up to the courthouse.
We can't answer that.
Okay, and these are the courthouse doors that you see Moocher going into. He opens up the door, Nancy and he go into the door, and you can see this decorative masonry work that's around the doorway. So when he opens up the door, this is right behind him. But this is the set of doors that they show him in. Okay, I'm standing at the intersection that Dave would be going in the direction that these cars are going, same way. And he's on his bike and he races through this intersection when the light turns. Now over here would have been a bus and a little yellow car that was ironically being driven by his dad. So you can see the cutout of that building, and you can definitely see the facade of this building here. So the light's about to turn, Dave shoots across it, the bus kind of starts, but the yellow car definitely goes out, hits its brakes, hits the horn, and that's when Dave like stops right here at the top of the hill. And then, let me zoom in a little bit. So he's sitting right out here in the middle of the street, and that's when he turns around and he's like, "Papa, ciao, Papa," and his dad just giving him a crazy look on his face.
Papa! Ciao, Papa!
Okay, I'm here in Bloomington, Indiana, at the old Woolery Mill. This is the old limestone cutting mill that was featured in Breaking Away. Now this is a mill that you hear Dave's dad talk about, how he used to work as a cutter, and then he returns to this mill later in the movie. And you see him drive right along this little gravel road. There's a little gravel road here. Now I don't know the name of the parts of the structure here, but you can see, I'm gonna just say the steel girdered beams that extend outward on the mill. So you see those as the car kind of drives along this road here, and then he passes by the side of the mill like this, and then he goes right over in this direction, and he beeps his horn. He gets like right up in here and he beeps his horn. Okay, I came up alongside of the wall here to show you right where that little scene was shot. These are the two doors that were open. Dave's dad would have pulled his car up, parked it, and got out. And the guy's sitting right here on this opening.
Hi, Owen! Look who's here!
So there's that door. It was this first bay door here. They were sitting like side by side here, jokingly say he looks like a union organizer, and the other guy says something like he looks like a safety inspector.
Looks like a government safety inspector or union organizer. Dugan, I thought you'd retired.
Okay, so when Dave's parents are walking down the street at night, they come walking right down this sidewalk here, and they pass under Nick's English hut. And you can see this jagged little trim that's on right underneath the awning here. You can see that as they pass by here. So they come walking right down along here.
I'm just tired of it, Evelyn. I'm tired of worrying about it. No whistling. It's supposed to be a shag, boy. It's a shag. If I wanted whistling, get a bird.
When Dave is washing his cars here at the lot for his dad, you can see that building right here as well as that one. When Mike goes driving by in his car and he's working, you can see him drive down this way. And then there's a group of cyclists that are biking that way. You can see that building, and that building has definitely changed the facade somewhat, but you can see how it has that cutout. This is all stuff that's very visible in that scene. Now, when the car that Dave's dad sold, the guy breaks down, they push it right into the lot. That happened right here.
You stay out of this.
So they literally pushed the car into the lot, and it would have stopped roughly here.
Don't come in here with that. This car's been sold.
Now, there would have been a building that was sitting out here that's no longer there off on the far side.
But you gave me your word. Word? I don't remember hearing any word. Get this car off my lot.
Okay, so the start of the bike race would have happened right up here at the crest of the hill. Now, when the riders are coming south on 58, they come right around this corner here. There used to be a set of train tracks that crossed here, and this is where they almost hit the dog. The dog would have been roughly right about here. But this is where the racers would have been riding on this road right here. You can clearly see that church and that building that's beside it there. And there's a little bit of a, I don't know what that is, some sort of a smokestack or a tower of some sort, telephone pole, all visible when the racers are going right here in the scene in Heltonville that they used. So this building right across the street here was a Phillips 66 gas station. So they show Dave and the Italians when they're coming along this portion of the road, they pass by that gas station, and then you'll see this building over here. This is the Cabin Restaurant. So when they ride down along here, you can see the Cabin Restaurant. Okay, I'm standing in the alleyway that they show Mike driving his car down to give Moocher a ride. So Mike would have come down this alley towards where I'm filming, and you see him pass this building right here. Notice how it has over like the bricked over windows. Those are all visible, as is this wall. This wall is still here. You look at the alley, this building with the bricked over windows, and this wall. Mike's car stops right here, and then Moocher kind of climbs out of the window. He's sitting in the back seat, but he climbs out of the window, and then he walks in this direction towards the backyard of his house. But as you can see now, that is no longer there. There's all kinds of new construction on the location where Moocher's house would have been.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, this location here on Indiana's campus is where Dave would have been sitting over here on the bench waiting for Katherine. He was sitting here on the bench waiting for her, and she would have come walking from this direction.
Hi, Kathy.
And this is where he tells her that he's not Italian. So Dave would have been sitting right here on this bench, and he stood up, and Katherine was kind of commenting on his attire, how she said now he looks like everybody else.
Cello. Now you look like everybody else.
But this is where he was standing when he was telling her that he wasn't Italian. So his hands were against this wall, and he was sort of leaning against this pillar.
You sound funny.
They show the angle of Dave standing here with Katherine facing him. You can see that brick, how it projects outward. I'm sorry, that stone, how it projects outward. You can see it right here. It was almost touching this pillar when they filmed it, right like this.
Look, Kathy, my name is Dave Stohler.
So after Katherine smacks Dave, she walks over here, picks her books up off of this bench, and then she goes walking off in this direction. But you can see the front of this with the arches when she does that. Okay, so I'm over here by the library at Indiana University, and this is where Dave and his dad would have had the talk. Now at the time there would have been, instead of these tables like this, there would have been benches. So Dave and his dad are walking down this corridor. It's in the nighttime. I decided to come here during daytime so you could see it easier. But they're walking over here and Dave's dad is asking him if, you know, the guys still swim in the quarry.
You guys still go swimming in the quarries?
Sure.
There's a bench right here. He sits down next to that second pole. So he passes this main one. There's one, there's two. Sits right here.
So the only thing you got to show from my 20 years of work is the holes we left behind.
And you can also see into the windows how you can see the stacks of books inside the library. And when they get up, they walk off in this direction here. Dave is on the left, his dad is on the right. You can see this pillar on this side as they start to go off in that direction. You can also notice the concrete. It has like sort of like a different pattern from there to there, the shade of it, some different patterns in the concrete. That's all visible. They also shoot another scene that's right out here on the front porch. This is where Dave would be sitting right here. Mike was sitting on the porch right along the railing right here on right around that pillar right here. Mooch was sitting over there and Cyril was sort of standing up there with the bike.
You can't add or change anything.
Yeah, why, it's a piece of junk.
You know, and that's when they were having the discussion about whether they should, you know, race. Dave was unhappy with the bike, but that was a pretty extensive little shot that they showed right here at this house.
Hey, he's got a lot of personality to it. Huh.
That corner that I was trying to show you is right here. So this is the part of the porch where Mike was sitting on that I was pointing out there earlier.
Oh, the hell with it.
Now, the homeowner actually told me something interesting about the shed that was here. So there is a shed back here, looks much different from the one in filming, and it's because it wasn't the one that was used in filming. He said the original shed was actually back here on the other side of this little alley. So I can show you that as well. So you see there's like a little like a little lane, like a little alley. He said the shed was right here. It was not actually over here. He said it was on this alley. So if you remember, Dave pops out of the shed after he's been working on his bike and he gets on this little, it's, you know, like a little gravel drive, and he comes out right here onto this road, and that's when he takes off in this direction. That was cool that he was able to help me out to match that up, because I assumed that it was just here in the backyard, but he said no, it was on the other side of this alley right where I just showed you. So this location I'm about to show you ahead of me here is the most pivotal filming location of the movie. And when I walk up here and show you the area, you're probably not going to recognize it. And I'll get to that in 1 second. So this is an arboretum on the campus of Indiana University, and very beautiful part of campus. Probably doesn't look very familiar to anybody who's watched Breaking Away recently. So if this location doesn't jump out at you, it really shouldn't, because it looks nothing like it did during filming. And this is where the former 10th Street Stadium once stood. This is where the stadium that held the Little 500 once resided. So it was sort of a horseshoe, and I'm going to show you a different perspective of it, but it sort of had like a horseshoe seating capacity. So the horseshoe was shaped like, you know, the closed end of the horseshoe would be in that direction, and the open end of the horseshoe would have been over here. So where I'm standing would have been, the press box area would have been right about here where this gateway is. You can see the cars out there. If you look at some old images of 10th Street Stadium, and I'll do that, you're going to see that there was the street that ran parallel to the playing field, and then the press box would have been roughly here. The seats, the grandstands, would have been here, and right out in front of me here would have been roughly where the cinder track was, and then the playing surface. So the finish line for the little 500 would have been right about here. And you can see there's a placard right here talking about how the race was held here between 1951 and 1980. Now it's currently being held over at Armstrong Stadium, but during filming it was not over there. It was right here. This is where they utilized the space, the stadium, for all of the filming locations of the race for the little 500. I'm going to go over here and show you a picture that's going to go towards this part of the campus, and I'll line some things up for you and show you. So I walked across the other side to give you another view of where the stadium sat, and this building really gives it, puts it into perspective. I'm going to put an overlay of an image it was taking exactly where I'm standing here, and you can see this building, you can see the front of it, and you can see a little bit of the side. I came over here to get the angle so it would match the picture that I'm going to overlay on top of it, and you can see how the stadium would have gone this way, curved, and then would have gone down this way. So Dave would have come out these doors with the pizza, the slice of pizza, and he would have come over here and leaned up against this tree. Now, it wasn't this tree exactly. They've since removed the tree, but there was a tree right here where this one stood. It just was more mature. But there was a parking meter right here that isn't there any longer, obviously. They've moved it over here. But he leans up against a tree and kind of slinks to the ground, and he's sitting down here on the ground eating his pizza. And he's sort of leaning his head up against the back of this tree with the sun shining on his face. And that's when he sees Katherine. And as she's standing right here, you can see that statue over her shoulder.
Mom.
So the two of them stand up and they're having a conversation right here. Right about like this. So Dave would be standing here, Katherine was standing there, and you can see the courthouse in the background.
What are you doing here?
So I came over here to show you the side where the press box would be. That building through the trees right there is the building that I showed you on the closed end of the stadium from the other side. So the stadium, the closed end of the seating would have wrapped around this way.
And here comes your leader now, Blue turn.
So when Dave and Rod are coming down the final turn, they would have come right along where my finger is, showing you the cinder track would have been right here in front of the grandstands.
34 coming up very close on the inside. Here they go.
And this is where Dave would have edged out Rod, right here across the finish line. Okay, so right here's the bridge that you see towards the end of the movie when Dave comes walking across it and down the steps. There's a guy in the scene that's sitting right here on this little piece of concrete that goes over the top of all the stonework right here.
The union?
But Dave comes walking down the steps right here on this side, right where my finger is. He comes walking down, and then right out here is where he meets the French girls.
Pardon, do you know where is the office of the purser?
So Dave and the French girl would have been standing right here. Dave would have been facing me. You can see that behind him. The French girl would have been, her back would have been towards me, facing that direction when she was talking to him.
You must mean the bursar's office.
We...
So in the end scene of Breaking Away, this is the shot that they give you of Dave and the French girl riding bikes. Dave would have been on the right, she would have been on the left, and they would be coming down in the direction I'm standing. But you see this house in the background, very recognizable. Window way up high at the peak, 2 sets of windows, and then the big bay window. You can see through the trees also, there's that fireplace that's very visible in the scene.
I was thinking of taking French, but it's my first year. Have you ever seen the Tour de France?
And as they're riding down this road in this direction, coming in this direction would be Dave's dad, but they shot it up a little further, and I'll show you where they did that. Okay, so I came up the road. Now I'm on the back side of that house that I just showed you. So they make it look like Dave and the French girl passed his dad down here, but the reality is they came back up. There's a little bit of a hill here. You can't really tell by the way what I'm showing you, but they came up here, and so they backed the scene up. So you can see this is when Dave is talking to her about the Tour de France, and you can see that artwork. It's sort of in the shadow, and you again see that building on the corner, and this is where he passes his dad, and his dad says something like, "Hi there, big shot," or something like that.
The French riders, they're the best. Un critère pour la doigt. Hi, big shot!
That's when Dave says, "Bonjour," and his dad turns around. He's going across this crosswalk here. It looked a little different. There were more trees and the buildings were different. But that's when his dad turns around with that crazy look on his face.
Bonjour!